Hello and welcome back to another interesting continuing topic on India's ESG evaluation from concept to practice. Today, India encounters challenges in ESG integration. There are substantial opportunities to address these issues and promote sustainable and responsible business practice. As global ESG awareness continues to rise, India can leverage ESG principles to stimulate economic growth, enhance social well-being, and bolster the environmental sustainability. Achieving these requires a collaborative efforts from business, investors, policymakers, and civil society. In this presentation, I will discuss environmental efforts within the ESG framework that are increasingly visible, with India making headway in renewable energy adoption, enhanced waste management, and water conservation practice. Corporates are actively reducing their carbon footprint, aligning with the environmental expectations of global investors. Social actions are equally robust, reflecting a commitment to not just a profit but people. Initiative encompassing improved labor standards, community engagement, and enhanced are taking center stage. The social facet of ESG in India is becoming increasingly sophisticated, with the business investment in the upliftment and well-being of their employees and to the communities outside the business entity. On the governance front, the focus is on the fortifying framework that emphasizes accountability and transparency. India corporates are aligning with the global best practices, instituting robust governance mechanisms that appeal to conscientious investors. Milestones such as the mandatory CSR spending directive and the SEBI's business responsibility and sustainability reports mandate for top listed entities signals India's firm commitment to ESG principles. These regulatory frameworks have provided much needed clarity and direction for ESG reporting. The National Voluntary Guidelines for Business Responsibility criteria play a vital role in assessing companies' future financial performance, considering aspects like return and risk. These guidelines introduce environmental and social protection legislation alongside ethical corporate governance. They also mandate corporate disclosure of environmental, social, and governance information utilizing three distinct approaches: the welfare approach, the right-based approach, and the sustainability approach. Now I will narrate on each issue of ESG in detail. Now first I shall discuss status of ESG investment in India. Environmental, social, and governance criteria have become increasingly important in the corporate world, reflecting a growing awareness of sustainability and ESG investment and business practice have gained significant momentum in India over the last decade, driven by the regulatory policy, investors, and global influence and rising sustainability challenge. However, ESG integration remains a long-term journey for Indian market. On the regulatory front, guidelines by SEBI, business responsibility reporting mandates, sustainability disclosure norms have expanded ESG awareness and disclosure by companies. The top 1,000 listed companies now submit business responsibility and sustainability reports. However, compliance levels vary across small and big firms. Enforcement of standards need further strength. Investor demand for sustainable investment has catalyzed the ESG movement. Assets under management of ESG mutual fund have grown from just 2 in 2014 to over 30, totaling $5 billion in 2021. Leading institutions like LIC, SBI, and HDFC have incorporated ESG metrics in their investment framework. However, retail investors and smaller firms lag in ESG adoption. Globally, commitments to the Paris Agreement, UN SDGs, and net zero emission have influenced top Indian companies operating in export-driven sectors to embedded ESG policy. However, smaller business oriented towards domestic market remains less proactive. On the environment, the major ESG risk for India includes water stress, air pollution, waste management, and over-exploitation of natural resources. Companies are slowly responding through clean energy, recycled materials. On the environment, the major ESG risk for India includes water stress, air pollution, waste management, and over-exploitation of natural resources. Companies are slowly responding through clean energy, recycled materials, water conservation, and greener supply chain. But broader commitment are needed to move the needle. Key social risks like poverty, healthcare access, income inequality, and unemployment requires dedicated corporate action on targets like skill development, fair wages, and diversity. More transparent HR policy, better safety guidelines, and community engagement are gradually expanding. Governance changes also underway through independent boards, improved risk management, and higher transparency. However, issues around the corruption, unethical practice, and lack of accountability persist across various sectors and size of business. Overall, while India has made a considerable progress on ESG, the adoption remains nascent and fragmented. Greater regulatory enforcement, investors' advocacy, proactive leadership by industry's champions, partnership, and capacity building can embed sustainability principles deeply across India and power the country transition towards a just, inclusive, and greener economy trajectory. ESG factors are becoming more important to institutional investors around the world when making investment decisions. Let us see individual efforts being made for each letter of ESG. Thus, today one can summarize ESG investing as a need for the global money that have evolved into a driving force. Indian companies seek foreign investments and access to international capital market are aware of the importance of proving outstanding ESG performance. In this slide, I am just summarizing the tips of iceberg related to environmental efforts of ESG in India. Indian companies have been taking a range of initiatives to address critical sustainability issues, including carbon emission reduction, renewable energy adoption, waste management, and resource conservation. Several Indian companies are transitioning from traditional fossil fuel to cleaner and more sustainable energy source. The example mentioned in the slide, proactive sustainability measures carried out by the Indian business demonstrate a thorough dedication to ecological friendly practice encompassing a wide spectrum of green behavior. To lessen their impact on the environment, they are adopting renewable energy options like solar panel and taking part in carbon offsetting activities like planting trees. Additionally, on the agenda are waste reduction techniques and a focus on resource efficiency, with the business implementing cutting-edge technology to reduce waste production and maximize resource utilization. In India, where business are not only prospering economically but also promoting a greener, healthier world for future generations. These coordinate efforts demonstrate a growing commitment to environmental responsibility and is helping shape a more sustainable corporate landscape. In this slide, I am just taking a few examples of social action under the ESG in India. I am summarizing the efforts made by the Indian companies in the social action for ESG. A company's commitment to moral and sustainable business practices includes initiatives related to corporate social responsibility, community involvement, and labor practice. The highlighted example in the slide from these corporate entities demonstrate a diversified range of corporate social responsibility initiatives, signifies the persistent commitment of the prominent companies in India to tackling crucial social challenges. These companies are not only profit-seeking entities but also active promoters of social improvement, focusing on initiatives that promote positive changes through subsidies program, affordable healthcare, sanitation, hygiene campaigning, sustainable procurement practice, and supporting girls' education. They exhibit a holistic approach to corporate social responsibility that transcends commercial interest and ultimately foster a more equitable and prosperous society. A major social impact could be judged from the top 1,000 listed companies, referring the non-financial performance for judging or linking the ESG score by rating agency. In this slide, I am going to discuss few examples related to governance strategies of ESG in India. Corporate governance in India has undergone significant reforms in recent years. The Company Act 2013 represents a landmark legislative overhaul introducing crucial provisions aimed at enhancing transparency and accountability. Enhancing transparency is a fundamental pillar of corporate governance in India. Regulatory authorities, market force, and investors' expectations have driven efforts to improve disclosure and transparency. SEBI listing regulation, for instance, impose stringent disclosure norms on listed companies. Moreover, institutional investors and proxy advisor firms have taken on more active role in engaging with the companies on environmental, social and governance matters and voting on resolution, thereby advocating for a greater transparency and accountability. The establishment of the National Financial Reporting Authority has bolstered efforts to ensure the quality of financial reporting and auditor independence. Further, the reinforcement transparency in corporate operation. The example narrated in the slide deserves a rising appreciation for the values of varied viewpoint and background in the top leadership in India, which reflects a wider movement towards a diversity in India's corporate landscape. Though I had summarized ESG investment, environmental, social and governance in the actual picture, still there is a mammoth task to explore issues under ESG for these variables and very challenging for India. Owing to research experience, I will be taking each topic separately in my forthcoming series of presentation on ESG. Here I am going to discuss the milestones of ESG in India. It is very difficult to benchmark the origin of ESG in India, but it is believed that socially responsible investing has been over 2 decades. The origin of the term ESG can be traced back to the early 2000s when the investment manager and other stakeholders began to recognize the importance of considering non-financial factors in their decision-making process, tending more towards holistic approach that emphasize the importance of considering a range of environmental, social and governance factors in investment decision rather than just focusing on a few specific issues. The early seed of ESG refers way back to an array from 2009 to 2012 where in 2008 the India First Sustainability Index, the SP and ESG India Index was launched to track ESG performance of the top 50 companies, which later in 2009 expanded to 500 companies. In the same year, 2009, in India, voluntary guidelines on corporate social responsibility by Ministry of Corporate Affairs marked the initial push towards the sustainable practice. Later in 2011, the National Voluntary Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs further strengthened the focus on the environmental and the social responsibility. This follows the Security and Exchange Board of India in 2012 made mandate business responsibility reporting for the top 100 listed companies by market capitalism, introducing ESG consideration into financial reporting. India marked the gradual growth of ESG from 2013 when the Companies Act of 2013 mandate the disclosure of energy conservation efforts in annual reports, further integrating environmental aspect into corporate governance. Well, in 2015, BRR requirement extended to the top 500 listed companies, expanding the scope of ESG reporting. Later in 2017, SEBI issued a guideline for institutions of listing of green debt securities facilitating investment and environmentally responsible projects. One should also note that simultaneously there is a progress of ESG reporting framework in India. The mandatory formalization and real acceleration were marked after 2018 when SEBI constituted a committee on ESG disclosure to recommend a comprehensive framework. A breakthrough came in 2021, the introduction of Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report framework by SEBI mandating detailed ESG disclosure for the top 1,000 listed companies. This framework aims to promote responsible business practice, encouraging listed companies to integrate sustainability consideration into their strategies and operations, thereby fostering long-term value creation for stakeholders and the broader society. Further, in 2023, strengthening of ESG regulation and framework by SEBI and other government agencies. The GRI standards are globally recognized guidelines for the sustainability reporting introduced in India in 2017 and fully operationalized in 2021 onward. They provided a structured framework for organizations to report on their economic, environmental, and social performance. These standards help companies in India align their reporting with international best practices, enhancing transparency and accountability in areas such as environmental impact, human rights, and corporate governance. These are 8 documents that enhance the ESG activities in India. We will take each document in description in the forthcoming topic under the ESG series of presentation, but we'll take one of the most important document on the National Voluntary Guidelines on Social, Environmental and Economic Responsibility of Business. The National Voluntary Guideline on Social, Environmental and Economic Responsibility of Business were released by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in India in July 2011. The guidelines are a significant step towards the inclusive development aiming to develop the corporate sector in their efforts. They were updated in 2015 to capture the key national international development in the development agenda and business responsibility field. The guidelines provided a framework for business to operate responsible considering economic, social and environmental aspects. They include principles and core elements guiding on implementation, application of micro, small and medium enterprises and a business responsibility reporting framework. The guidelines also provide resource and explanation of terms to aid business in their implementation. The NVG represents a shift from individual charity or philanthropy to corporate social responsibility, corporate citizenship, and responsible business behavior of the commercial entity. In this slide, the National Voluntary Guidelines on Social, Environmental and Economic Responsibility of Business released by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in July 2011 is essentially a set of 9 principles that offers Indian business an understanding and approaches inculcate responsible business conduct. However, taking into account the national and international development in the arena of sustainable business since 2011, the NVG have been updated and released as a national guideline on responsible business conduct in March 2019 to reveal alignment of United Nations Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights, UN Sustainable Development Goals, Paris Agreement on Climatic Change, etc. The NGB, the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct, provides a framework for companies to grow inclusively and sustainable while addressing the concern of stakeholders. Overall, the guidelines provide a comprehensive framework for responsible business conduct that balances profitable with the ethical value, social development, and environmental stewardship. We will give a brief each principle one by one. Principle 1 largely focuses on the ethical conduct at all levels by developing proper governance structure, practice, procedure with transparent communication. It also a truthful discharging of the responsibility of financial and other mandatory disclosure. This principle cautions not to engage in practices that are abusive, corrupt and anti-competition and avoid complicity with the action of any third party that violates any of the principles. Principle 2 assures safety and optimal resource use over the life cycle of the product. It recognizes the right of its consumer through education, product labeling, appropriate and helpful communication, full details of the content and safe usage of by promoting sustainable consumption. Further, it also ensured that the manufacturing process and technologies are resource efficient and sustainable and recognize and respect intellectual property rights. Besides, it gives much importance to regular review and improve upon the process of new technology development, deployment and commercialization incorporating social, ethical, environmental consideration. Further, Principle 3 gives much impetus to respect the right of freedom of the association, participation, collectively bargaining and accept the proper grievance redressal mechanism and provides equal opportunity to all caste, creed, gender, religion, race, disability or it ensures that no child labor, forced labor or any form of involuntary labor, paid or unpaid, and provides a cognitive of the life balance of employees, especially women having facilities of their well-being with harassment-free workplace. Besides, it gives importance to safe, hygienic and human workplace environmental and ensure continuous skill and competence upgradation of all employees. Principle 4 systematically identifies their stakeholders, understands their concern, defines the purpose and scope of engagement and commit to engaging with them. It also acknowledges assumed responsibility and is transparent about the impact of its policy, decision, product and services and associated operation on the stakeholders. Further, it gives special attention to stakeholders in underdeveloped areas and resolve differences with stakeholders in just, fair and equitable manner. Principle 5 helps to understand the human right content of the Constitution of India, national law and policies and the content of the International Bill of Human Rights. It emphasizes integrating respect for human rights in management system through assessing and managing human rights impact of the business operation and not being complicit with the human rights abuse by the third parties. Further, it recognizes and respects all human rights of relevant stakeholders and groups within and beyond the workplace. This principle promotes the awareness and realization of the right across its value chain. While Principle 6 emphasizes utilizing natural and man-made resources optimally and reasonably, taking measures to check and prevent pollution and ensuring that benefits are shared equitably. It gives much importance to the environment by developing an environment management system and contingency plan for continuous improvement of environmental performance and its reporting. Above all, this principle proactively persuaded and supports its value chain for the adoption. Principle 7 emphasizes business conduct while pursuing the policy advocacy and must ensure that their advocacy positions are consistent with the principle and core element contained in these guidelines. It further directs that business should utilize the trade and industry chambers and association and other such collective platform to undertake such policy advocacy. The principle 8 helps to understand their impact on the social and economic development. It innovates and invests in product technology and process that promote the well-being of society and mitigates any negative impact. It also emphasizes making efforts to complement and support the development priorities at local and national level. Further, the principle cautioned that the business operating in underdeveloped regions should be especially sensitive to the local concern. While last is the Principle 9 considered the overall well-being of the customer and that of society. It ensures that they do not restrict the freedom of choice and free competition in any manner and mandates to disclose all information truthfully and factually through labeling and other means. It also cautioned to promote and advertise their product in a way that do not mislead, confuse the consumer or violate any of the principles in these guidelines. Provide adequate grievances handling mechanism to address customer concern and feedback. It much emphasized to execute due care and caution while providing goods and services that result in the overexploitation of natural resources or lead to excessive conspicuous consumption. Before I concluding, I encourage viewers to categorize 9 business principles with ESG framework. This understanding will facilitate the next presentation on the environmental component of ESG. Do not forget to subscribe my channel. So stay tuned till the next week. Till then, bye bye.